Welcome to the Take Action podcast, where we empower communication partners to feel confident with AAC. I am Lauren Greenleaf, a certified speech-language pathologist with nearly a decade of experience in AAC. Join us weekly as we dive into all of the aspects of AAC and hear from communication partners just like you who are successfully integrating AAC into their daily lives. Whether you are an SLP, a parent, an educator, or any other communication partner, you are absolutely in the right place if you are ready to take actionable steps towards AAC success today. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Take Action podcast. I am super excited because I have one of my dear friends, Laura, here with us today. Laura, welcome to the show.
Hi, Lauren. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here today.
Absolutely. I am excited for our chat. We're going to dive into some early intervention pieces. But before we do that, Laura, will you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. So I am an Ohio-based SLP and mom of two little boys. My partner was formerly in the military, so I have been an SLP in many states, and I've also worked in various settings. But early intervention is my one true love. I am also the founder of Early and Bright Online Learning, and our mission is to create a professional community of educational resources aligned with a play-based whole child approach to supporting communication skills and early development. And then within that, we do a variety of professional development courses that are designed specifically for SLPs who work with children under the age of 4. And we have become very close friends and frequently collaborating colleagues through your work as the instructor of the AAC and early intervention course, which you are absolutely brilliant in. So we're so lucky to have you and lucky to call you a friend, and happy to be here today to talk more about AAC in that early intervention setting.
Absolutely. I feel equally as lucky that you let me into your little slice of education. And we are going to talk a little bit more about the course towards the end. But let's kind of dive into the AAC piece a little bit. So you do have some experience with AAC and actually really like AAC. So can you tell everybody a little bit about that piece too?
Yes. So 2024 actually marks my 15th year of working as an SLP. I always knew I wanted to do peds, and I always had a passion for supporting functional communication. So my first job was actually in an elementary school where I worked with a lot of non-speaking students with a variety of support needs. And that's where I really kind of dove in headfirst into the AAC world. And that started out really with a lot of getting students devices that were dedicated devices at that time. Believe it or not, the iPad Generation 1 came out during my CFY year. So that was like very much learning all of the iPad technology and all of the apps to go along with that in real time. But I did go on to get many of my students iPads and taking that route too. So I really fell in love with AAC and supporting emerging communicators in that first setting. And that's what really led me to early intervention and kind of wanting to go more toward that setting, is getting to support more children and their families with who are emerging communicators and supporting those early skills, which I just really have always loved.
Yeah, it's really cool now being in the EI population myself, since I've been in schools for so long and preschool for so long, but just kind of transitioning down into early intervention to really like get in on the ground floor, for lack of a better way to put it. Yeah. And it's a really cool way to experience AAC. And I want to highlight too, you mentioned that the first iPad actually came out during your CFY year. AAC is constantly evolving and ever changing. And even just I consider 15 years a relatively short time for most of us in our career. And that's a really big change that's occurred since you started.
Oh, yeah, for sure. There's been so many changes. And I honestly think the advent of iPads and making all of like the smartphone technology ubiquitous has made AAC even more accessible for families because they're familiar with that technology. So I think it just has kind of propelled us to a place in the field where we have even more opportunities to introduce AAC and introduce AAC early on.
Yes. So with that, what do you see in your experience AAC typically looking like in that early intervention population?
Okay, so this is based on my experience both in this setting and in conversations with hundreds of SLPs in the online space. I really see a focus primarily on those no tech, which would be enhanced gestural input and supporting gesture use and introducing ASL signs. That would be kind of like in that no tech umbrella. Then in addition to that, I see a lot of some light tech AAC. So to elaborate, I think there is a very good reason for no tech and a very good use case for no tech forms of AAC and early intervention. We know how important gesture development is for early communication, and we know that supporting the use of gestures and helping children expand their communication with gestures does promote their communication skills. And the same would follow for introducing those ASL signs, of course. So there really is a strong place for those types of no tech AAC and early intervention. Additionally, I see a lot of light tech. And interestingly, the light tech that I see most people using is the more focused on the requesting aspect. So a lot of picture choice boards. I see a lot of people that are using PECs to facilitate requesting with that system. So that would be in contrast to something like a communication board, which would have a variety of pictures that would allow children to communicate for a variety of purposes. I really see more of the focus on the requesting function being kind of at the forefront in this particular setting. As far as high-tech AAC, I feel it's pretty limited. There are definitely some amazing SLPs out there using high-tech AAC and early intervention. For the most part, I feel like this is definitely an area where there is a lot of potential for growth and also a need for kind of support and guidance. It's kind of one of the reasons we connected initially is I really admired your approach to education around this topic and the emphasis that you placed on that early intervention aspect for AAC.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in my experience, it's been really similar too. As I kind of dive even more into the EI population, just as I've grown through my career, I see that high-tech piece isn't used as often. And I think there are definitely some barriers to the high-tech AAC, which we'll get to in a minute. But like you said, there is really good evidence for the gestures. There is really good evidence for that no-tech piece. And even just picture supports in general is all usually really helpful. But there is so much more that we can really do to provide these kids an opportunity to communicate. And I have to agree in regards to the requesting piece. I feel like typically when a family comes into EI, all of the goals tend to center around some type of like getting wants and needs met within whatever daily routine that may be. And
Definitely.
and that definitely causes us to kind of want to move towards those requesting words. But what we do know about kids and what we do know about language development is that it tends to be the much more fun, exciting, fringe vocabulary that is really kind of first developed. And there absolutely are some core words and requests in there too, but it's really a mix. It's one of those like you got to kind of have it all.
Yeah, definitely. I think this to a certain degree kind of goes back to the IFSP process. And a lot of times that's like what your service coordinator, who's typically going to be like drafting the IFSP, is hearing from the parent. They want them to be able to say what they want, say what they need. And that ends up as like one of the first goals often is requesting or making their wants and needs known. So there's also like this parent education piece of, okay, that is wonderful. And we totally need that function of communication. And look at all of these other ways that all of us communicate and how can we support those too?
Yes. Yeah. And I like to tell families that a lot of the times these other ways, like the commenting or the like exclamation words or the animal noises, those all get us toward our end goal of those more requesting like vocabulary. We just gotta make learning language fun and exciting.
Absolutely. And one of my biggest soapboxes of parents is about protesting. Like we need to teach them how to say no, how to say stop, how to say go away, or I don't like this. That's really important for their self-advocacy, their safety. I know that we are totally on the same page with this, but that is usually not on the IFSP. Teach my child how to say no. That's not what like is coming out of the mouth of a caregiver, typically.
Yes, because it opens a big can of worms. A good can of worms, but a big can of worms. All right. So we know the importance of AAC. We know how it can support language. So why do you think, in your experience, SLPs or EI teams in general get stuck in this light tech, no tech kind of situation?
I think there's a lot of reasons. I think one of them is kind of goes back to kind of what we already touched on with these parent focused goals. And like really the goals are coming directly from what the parent says that they want to see their child doing or what their hopes are for their child. And that is often initially they're going to be thinking about getting their child to use spoken words. That is where a lot of the that's where the thought process usually is. So they're not even really thinking about communication in a broad sense, like, that we all do as SLPs and all the different things that could be communication. They're just wondering why their child isn't talking. So I think there's like an emphasis on, even just from the goal perspective, on that, the spoken word aspect, and which again circles back to the parent education piece, and ideally like having that talk right there while you're, formulating the IFSP to kind of broaden that initially, and just having that parent education of all of the ways that we communicate, all of the functions of communication, and all of the forms that can take on, and that we are really all using different various types of AAC every single day, and how can we give their child access to as much communication as possible, as much robust communication as possible, so that we can really see them succeed with communication as a broader goal, kind of like zooming out from just that spoken language focus. And then I think, it's like easier said than, done. You can give that, have that collaborative conversation and kind of give your amazing spiel, and you're still going to have parents who really are not wanting to expand their focus beyond that spoken aspect. So it's sometimes a longer conversation, a longer process. And I do think there are barriers for a lot of caregivers when it comes to just that mindset shift and being more accepting and embracing of other forms of communication. And then on the other side of that, I think just as SLPs, like across the board, there's varying levels of comfort and experience with AAC, especially that high-tech aspect can be intimidating just technology-wise. And there's so many apps. And then even to be able to access and start learning the apps, you have to know the technology that they're hosted on. And they're while technology is becoming a bigger part of our daily lives in general, I do still think there's a barrier with experience and comfort level for some people who may be more comfortable with things like the light tech or the no tech, just feel a little more comfortable, I guess I would say. And then just those like the two big questions that we're always thinking about is like, where do I start and when do I start?
Absolutely.
And I know where you stand on these, and we are on the same page. And I think with that, where to start is like giving them access to everything, giving them access to a robust system from the beginning, not limiting it to those no tech and light tech forms. Is something that I think we're on the same page about. And then when to start would be now, right? Like anytime you see
right now
a need for communication, for supporting a robust communication. So that execution in reality is a little more tricky and can be difficult of, okay, like there's so many variables. How do I approach this with the family? How do I access the resources I'm going to need to pursue this path? When is the child, when is the child, family, the whole team, that unit, like, how do I get everyone ready for this? So there is so many, there's a lot of moving pieces and parts and things to think about. Especially if you're thinking on, about a high-tech device. And I just think it can be overwhelming.
Yes, it absolutely can be. And I think early intervention becomes kind of this like unique setting in the sense that you're genuinely like with the parent every step of this way. And we don't necessarily see that all the time in the rest of our field. And this is also their first introduction to any type of disability service or any type of support regarding their child's development. And that in and of itself comes with a lot. So you kind of touched on that mindset piece of like speech versus communication. And that's a distinction I think us as SLPs really understand, but the general population themselves don't really tease out, is this a speech thing? Is this a language thing? Or are we just communicating?
Right. And there's also like there seems to be like a higher value placed on the spoken language piece of things, which I mean, I think as SLPs, we can all agree that all communication is equal and valid and amazing, but not everyone is there. So it is work to kind of, pull caregivers into that conversation at times.
Yeah. And I can definitely see from the SLP's perspective too, then if you're kind of navigating that component of kind of helping to shift a mindset and helping to support a family that's new to all of this, but then also trying to learn a high-tech AAC device and all of the nuances that go with that. It's like a very significant learning curve at the beginning. So there's just a lot going on. And I think you're right, though. I think that is a really big reason why we kind of get stuck, because signs and gestures are pretty easy to incorporate and everybody's really familiar with those. But once we get to that high-tech realm, everybody's not as comfortable with it. Like the whole team becomes kind of uncomfortable and overwhelmed. So it's a lot harder to navigate.
Yeah. And I just thought of another thing that I think is a huge sticking point. We talked about some of the other factors there, but just starting that evaluation process, like what does that look like? Who's going to do it? How am I going to get devices to even trial? Like just navigating that as if that is a new process for you, is very confusing. There's just a lot of moving parts, and it can be hard to know exactly how to or where to start, how to take that next step, how to access the resources you're going to need. All of that is, I think, can create kind of a block around just even getting started.
Yeah. And I always tell people to get started. Wherever you want to start is a good place to start. But we've come up with something together, which we'll talk about in a little bit, to kind of help solve that problem in and of itself. But before we dive into that, for everybody listening, let's assume we're SLPs. I know there are some parents listening and educators listening too, but if you're at this point where you're in that early intervention space, you know the child needs some type of communication support. Right now, you're really just relying on that no tech, light tech. What are some ideas that we could share today to kind of help people get unstuck from that? How can we help them kind of dive into that high-tech world a little bit more?
Okay, so there's 3 things that are coming to mind right away. So the first thing is keep doing what you're doing. Yeah. Any AAC that you are providing, that you are adding for this child and family is amazing. And I think we need to acknowledge that. Yeah. You're everyone who's doing these no tech and light tech forums, awesome. You are bringing more communication to this child and their family.
Absolutely.
And then thinking about, okay, this is going to be limiting long term just because of the nature of a paper-based a single page with some pictures. Yeah. That's obviously not going to provide the sort of access to communication that we are wanting for children. Just in their ability to communicate for a variety of purposes, just, to be able to, communicate novel messages and generate their own thoughts and ideas. A few pictures is not going to get it done. Yeah. It's a good thing to have as part of the AAC system. Yes. Ultimately, when we're thinking about that robust communication, that would be our goal. How can we start exploring? This would be my second kind of get started place, is just exploring what resources are available in your state. So like your state lending library or the device reps that are in your region, kind of exploring, okay, what are my resources? Who is available as a resource? Yeah. And how can I start exploring? Potentially, is there a way for me to start exploring some of these high-tech apps to, get familiar with a couple of the high-tech apps, or just start getting used to using them so that you can be ready to model with them in a session. And then, my third thing was going to be starting to think about, with every single case, painting that picture of communication beyond spoken words from the very beginning. I think that puts everybody in a better place for supporting the child, giving them the best support that we possibly can, and having that conversation of how do we support communication in ways that are not just spoken words. So having, writing the goal on the IFSP, or kind of steering the conversation in a collaborative way, okay, can we write this in, for communication, and focus on communication rather than spoken words. And even if it's written as in a certain way, really just having that conversation and having that as part of the collaborative relationship with parents from the beginning, I think will be really helpful going forward.
Yeah, I love that idea, because there's always, at least on the Ohio IFSP, there's that spot to add in strategies that you want to use to support your goals. And I'm assuming that's nationwide. Yes. So what a perfect spot to start to incorporate those, even if you're not. It'd be wonderful to put it into the goal itself, but if you're not quite there yet with the family for whatever reason, you could incorporate those into that strategy piece really easily too. Yeah. And going back to some of those other things you said, like being excited about everything that you are already doing. It's a big accomplishment to come in and provide those types of supports. So, and even if families are already doing some of those things, we want to really acknowledge those and be happy about those. Because I feel like sometimes when we get in a therapy situation, we have a tendency to talk about like all the things that we need to do better and don't always focus enough on all the things we're doing already that are really good and really supportive.
Yes, completely. I think that's a huge component of having a strong and collaborative relationship with families and caregivers.
Yeah. And then the piece about kind of finding out your resources. So all states have a lending library. All states have device reps. And as speech therapists listening, you can access certain AAC applications for free. We're not going to dive all the way into that because it's its own episode, but there is a blog post on my website. So if you are looking for those resources and you go to inspireconnectionstherapy.com, you can go over to the blog and find those the directions for getting access to some of those free AAC supports. So with that, we're kind of coming to an end. Those were most of our questions. But before we end, I wanted to circle back because Laura mentioned her and I co-created a course specifically designed to support AAC in the early intervention population. And we just wanted to take a few minutes to kind of share it with you. So Laura, do you want to kind of tell us like where the idea came from for this course, and then any information people need to know about it?
Yes. So I started creating I created an online course for parents during COVID. And then I had a lot of SLPs taking this parent course. So I kind of shifted and started making courses for SLPs specifically.
Yeah.
And I knew that I do not have all the answers or expertise.
Yeah.
And AAC was always something that I shared, I was really passionate about. And based on my experience, which I talked about, I felt like there was such a strong need for more education and support for AAC and specifically high-tech AAC in this population. So I had taken one of your courses. I had connected with you in the online learning space and really admired all the way that you were sharing about AAC and starting early with AAC and how practical your approach was. So we had kind of talked, we talked about this for a while. Yeah. And last year we turned this course into reality. So we have a 2-hour course. Lauren, your podcast host, is the amazing instructor, and you already know that she's a phenomenal resource on this topic. And everything we talked about today, as far as kind of the sticking points and the things that are hard about accessing or moving towards high-tech AAC in this population, we kind of cover all of that in the course. We wanted to make it really comprehensive. Yep. But it's also succinct. So we really tried to strike the right balance. And we talk about all the types of AAC, how to design an AAC system that has all types of AAC. That includes opportunities for robust communication. We talk about how to go through an AAC evaluation and how to try all devices. We have information on implementation strategies. We talk about lots of AAC resources and how to connect with the resources near you, how to get access to the various high-tech apps. So there is a ton of stuff in this course. We also created a workbook to go with it, which I think is super helpful, at least for my learning style, being able to have all of the information from the course at your fingertips.
Yeah.
It's a digital workbook. So like we're using fingertips, like metaphorically.
Yes.
But I think, and then it includes all of the printables that we put in with the like the taking data for your AAC trials. There's printables for and there's an evaluation template.
Yeah.
So there's a printable for there's lots of printables for parent coaching and shifting mindsets and overcoming some of the challenges around parent coaching. So we really do hit it all.
Yeah.
I'm obviously biased. I know you are too, but it is a really great course if there's anyone out there who's interested in kind of learning more about this topic specifically for those younger children. But we're, really focused on kind of that under 4 range for this course, which I think makes it really unique and special.
Yeah. No, I obviously am very biased too, but we wanted to make sure that we shared it with you guys because if you've noticed at this point, every time we get on an episode, I ask people how they got into AAC and how they got started and started learning and navigating through it. And almost everyone has told me that they were just thrown in and they had to figure it out. And they went in search of resources. And truly, if you're feeling that way, like that is why this course was created. It really is like this perfect overview and detailed enough that like you're going to get enough information to implement tomorrow and start getting the ball rolling tomorrow. And then you can always dive in deeper with other courses and memberships and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm constantly doing things, but it's such a great introductory course that isn't just like, oh, this is what AAC is. Like we give you details in this course. You learn about all the apps, you learn about all the companies, you learn how to navigate those parent things. So it's like a bonus introductory course. It's introductory with some added bonuses to it.
Oh yeah, it's very actionable, and I think that was our goal. We wanted to really bring that value of this is something you can take straight into your therapy sessions immediately.
Yes, and at the time of release, so it'll be August 13th today, we are also excited to announce that we're officially approved for AACE CEUs. So Laura, can you go through that real quick? Because people can get CEUs now, and then if you've taken the course, you can also get CEUs, correct?
That is correct. So if you are new and wanting to interested in signing up for the course, you can earn 2 hours of professional development, which equals 0.2 AACE CEUs. And if you have already taken the course, you can submit a written request. I'm gonna be sending out an email, so check your inbox for instructions too. But basically, you can reset your progress to go back through the course for CEUs. So we cannot award these AACE CEUs retroactively. We can't take your old certificate of completion and say, okay, you earned CEUs, but you can go back through the course, earn a new certificate, and have those reported. And that is totally above board for AACE. And that is a way to, that is an option for you if you're like, but I already took it, but I really want the CEUs. So you have this nice option to be able to get those.
Yeah. And we're really excited about it because I know this makes it a little more accessible to those of you that happen to be in a state that require approved CEUs or AACE CEUs specifically. So now you can kind of use your education funds to tap into this course if you are interested. And we are excited to share that we will be running a sale this week on that course. So starting tomorrow, Wednesday, August 14th, running through Friday, August 16th, you will be able to get this course at a discounted rate, and you will find that discount code in the show notes. Laura, anything else you want to kind of end everybody with?
That's the one thing I'll add. I love hearing from people. I love connecting with other SLPs. So if you want to connect, reach out. I would love to hear from you.
Absolutely. And what is your Instagram handle so everybody knows what it is? And we'll put it in the show notes too.
It is at Early and Bright SLP.
Perfect. Well, Laura, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and for being an amazing friend and colleague. And just thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, this was fun. Thank you, Lauren. Talk soon.
All right, everybody. I hope you loved that chat just as much as I did. I absolutely love talking to Laura. Her and I really see a lot of things the same way, and it's made creating this course together so effortless, and we're so excited to bring it to you. So if you are interested in an action step for this week, first and foremost, it would be to kind of reflect on your practices. Are you giving the amount of support that these kids you're working with need in regards to AAC and their communication? My other action step for you would be, if you are interested in the course, come check it out starting tomorrow, August 14th. It will be on sale for 3 days. You can purchase it anytime throughout the year also. So if you're listening back at a later time, it is available to you. And then we also have a live coming up later this week. So if you are listening in real time, come over to our social medias, find those posts, and get on the wait list to get a seat for that live training. And we really look forward to connecting more with you. I hope you have a great day. And I will see you next week on the Take Action podcast.